Well, this was a surprise, wasn't it? I mean, it was for me at least. Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous. What a title. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I get it. Cutesy or whatever. I only heard about this show like 3 days before it came out. Would you like some cliff notes before we get into this? Well, you can't really answer me because this is a recording, so if you said no, too bad, I guess? Camp Cretaceous is about 6 kids who get early access to a camp program at Jurassic World that is not yet up and running. It's like a trial run for what's to come, and they've all acquired access by different means. It takes place during the events of the first Jurassic World movie and follows their perspective of surviving as things go wrong. This critique is going to be pretty thorough, so if you intend to watch the series and don't want it ruined, I suggest you come back after you've seen it. Now, I'm not going to be as in-depth with these guys as I was with the movie characters, so please, use the following brief summaries to try and keep track of who is who. Our main character is a kid named Darius. He apparently is the first person ever to beat the Jurassic World VR game and wins a trip to the park as a reward. He and his father had big plans to visit the park someday, as they're both dinosaur nerds. His father dies though before they get to go, so that dream is never actually played out. Darius is the kind of kid who just wants to be friends with everyone, even if he doesn't fit in. Next, we've got Kenji, a rich kid who hides his insecurities behind his status. He gets everything he wants in life, except for a good family relationship or even close friends. He obnoxiously radiates confidence and coolness, but his morals seem to be relatively grounded. The girl with the pink hair and green eyes is Brooklyn. She has over 20 million online followers, and her primary concern is their validation. She struggles with in-person interactions because she measures her worth by social media. When her followers disapprove, it bothers her a lot. Despite her fame, she's not really full of herself, but it did give her an exemption to keep her cell phone during her stay.
She's famous.
This is Ben. He's a walking cliché germaphobe. Afraid of nature, being dirty, being spontaneous, yada yada. Even his voice is unoriginal.
The world is a grab bag of gross, and we're all just along for the moist, sticky roller coaster ride called life.
He's a major rule follower and tries to keep everyone else from breaking them constantly. Even when others make fun of his flaws, he just explains his reasonings as if they should be obvious. His mom works for Masrani and put him in the camp to help him gain some courage. Up next is Sammy, a southern gal, the ultimate extrovert. She's like Darius in that she'll be friends with anyone, but she is so outgoing that she doesn't consider when she's making others uncomfortable. Either that, or she doesn't realize, or care. Her motive for being on the island is part of the plot, so that'll come in a few. And lastly, we have Yasmina. This girl is an athlete who has unexplained trust issues. She remains distant early on, but warms up to the group with time. It's not terribly clear, but I believe Jurassic World is some kind of sponsor of hers, which is probably how she got into Camp Cretaceous. And there you have our main characters. Unless I missed it, none of their ages are outright stated. A few context clues lead me to believe that all of them are 15 to 16, except Darius, who is more likely 13 to 14. Outside of the 6 kids are Dave and Roxy, the camp counselors, a few one-offs, and Dr. Wu himself. And that's pretty much it. Alright then. Now that you have a loose understanding of the who's and what's, let's dive into this thing. I'm kind of just going to critique the episodes in order and point out things that I think are important or that bother me. There are 8 episodes altogether. So yeah, audience, meet episode 1. Things kick off inside of the previously mentioned VR game that Darius is playing, where your goal is to survive against a bunch of dinosaurs. He doesn't beat it, and his brother Bran gives him shit for trying so hard because apparently hardcore gamers can't even finish it. This is when you find out about how visiting the park was a dream between him and his dad, and it gives him the motivation to beat the game.
It's go time. There it is!
5 minutes in, and we've already got a reference, the resonating chamber from Jurassic Park 3. So he wins, and Mr. DNA briefs him on his invite to Camp Cretaceous. We are instantly introduced to everyone else I've talked about from there. With this also comes the first of many problematic cartoony jokes. Kenji tries to pawn his bag off on Roxy, and then she throws it back at him. He is floored in a slapstick manner as a result. Let this set the tone for most of the series, because it happens often. For the time being, it focuses heavily on Brooklyn's fame. Sammy is starstruck and acts pretty cringy, and then quickly mentions that she got a spot in the camp because her family supplies the island all of its beef.
Also, my family supplies all the beef for the park, and that's how I got here.
Honestly, most of the exchanges while they're in the Jeep are kinda hard to sit through. Yasmina chimes in about how Brooklyn gets to keep her phone because of her followers, and then the first jump scare happens. Yeah, it's just a compy. The door sequence is stolen right out of the original Jurassic Park as they finally arrive at camp.
What do they got in there, King Kong?
The rest of the episode is spent taking in the park and seeing dinosaurs. Kenji, Darius, and Brooklyn sneak out after dark and end up at the raptor paddock. Kenji drops her phone inside, so his dumbass goes to get it. You know, cause he's cool or whatever. While he's down there, we get to see Blue. Yeah, you know, that Blue. And Delta and whatever the hell their other names are. And then boom, cliffhanger. Hey, maybe you've watched this already. Were you invested by this point? Cause I wasn't. Alright, so episode 2 starts kinda weird. Darius tells Kenji to check the bones, like in the video game. If you can't already see why that's weird, let me explain. While a kid equating real-life scenarios to a game isn't all that unusual, Darius expecting to actually find the Velociraptor's resonating chamber in the pile of leftover dinner bones is simply bad writing. It's a common thing to loop back to something previously mentioned to aha your audience, but this? It's not even a little believable. Anyway, yeah, they get rescued by the camp counselors. Darius takes the blame for breaking curfew because he's just a nice guy like that. Kenji takes full advantage, and then there's a fart joke.
The Dino Genius was saved by Kenji, the kid who thinks dinosaurs went extinct because their farts turned the air trashy.
What they've just gone through becomes trivialized by the tone of the whole exchange. Again, cartoonish. Still, they're punished by having to shovel
One big pile of shit.
while the other kids get to go to Dr. Wu's lab. Wu is the only character to physically cross over into the series from the movie. I actually thought he was voiced by B.D. Wong, the actor from the films, but he's not.
Young lady, no recording in the lab.
Impressive imitation. Meanwhile, Kenji wins over an angry Darius by flaunting his knowledge of the park. Darius gives in to breaking the rules again, and they take off through the maintenance tunnel. Brooklyn takes interest in seeing Wu's office, even though he says it's off limits. Ben finds himself bonding with a hatching Ankylosaurus that he names Bumpy, as we get another scene stolen out of the old JP. Now, Wu mentions an accelerated growth rate, but in a few minutes, you're going to see how astronomically fictional it's become. Brooklyn finds Sammy coming from Wu's office, but she says she got lost looking for a restroom. Likely story, right? Brooklyn then steals a flash drive from Wu's desk and discovers files on the Indominus Rex. Kenji and Darius narrowly escape a Carnotaurus that they name Toro, and then the same fart joke from before is brought up again. Ugh.
You do know farts didn't kill the dinosaurs, right?
A low-light scene shows a drone picking up a flash drive similar to the one Brooklyn stole, implying she's up to something. She's not. It was Sammy. Obvious. Moving on. Episode 3 is about Yasmina's growth, and also when things start really going wrong. No, not like the park falling apart, I mean the plot. But also the park. There is definitely some serious overacting by Sammy as she tries to make friends with Yasmina. Today, the kids get to use the gyrospheres, like the one Zack and Gray drive in the film. In fact, they actually find Zack and Gray's destroyed gyrosphere later. But before that, a bit of bonding takes place between Darius and Brooklyn. she's upset at the disapproval of her followers and kind of opens up to Darius as he tries to make her feel better. What a guy. A storm starts to brew, which apparently kills radio communications. The camp counselors say they are going to let the others know that the gyro trip is canceled. As in, they ditch the kids who have been nothing but trouble while they have access to their own transportation. This park was doomed from the start. So, a not Triceratops runs off because a thunderstorm scares her, and Darius wants to go after her to make sure she stays with the herd. To no one's surprise, things go wrong. They get lost, break their vehicles, typical stuff. Brooklyn and Darius get stuck in a sinkhole, and the others rescue them in a truly hard to believe scenario. Sammy gives a trust speech to the not Triceratops that conveniently also hits home with Yasmina, and this allows Sammy to tame the dinosaur enough to not only tie a rope around it, but to also have it pull the gyro out of the mud. It is truly absurd. The only thing that's been consistent in this show is how cartoony it really is. And yes, I'm fully aware that it is in fact an animated series, but if they wanted to tie it to the franchise and claimed it wasn't aimed at kids, then they should have tried harder to ground it in reality. Okay, moving on. Once again, nobody is sent home for their behavior, even though 20 minutes ago Darius was freaking out about being sent home. They just get another "don't do that" from Dave and Roxy. Yasmina has her growth moment and shows her scrapbook to Sammy, opening up or whatever. Brooklyn notices in one of her recordings that Sammy stole a DNA swab from that not Triceratops. Sammy notices that Brooklyn notices, but Brooklyn doesn't notice that Sammy notices that she noticed, and then the episode ends. So yes, now we know that Sammy's up to something, between sneaking into Wu's lab and stealing a DNA sample. Now she's stolen Brooklyn's phone since it had a clip of her shady behavior.
It wasn't there.
She denies it, of course, and because of her newfound friendship with Yasmina, she has backup against the accusation. Later, the phone breaks, and instead of giving it back when it comes up again, she just tucks it deeper into her pocket. It takes until now, the 4th episode, to really tie into the film. Roxy mentions that Claire wanted her nephews to join the camp while leaving her a voicemail, which ties into how Claire tried to get out of spending time with them.
I really wish that I could, but
There are further tie-ins this episode, as both Masrani shows up via helicopter and the Indominus escapes. It also takes until this episode for someone to die, but you don't even get to see it. Just an observation I've made, this show is extremely disconnected from the dense population of visitors from the movie. And once again, like with Zack and Gray, there is an issue of no trauma. The kids watch the Indominus eat someone, and it attempts to eat them. Instead of being horrified, Darius gives a generic speech that uplifts the group.
I've got the memories right here.
You can wait for the negligent babysitters, but I'm with Darius.
Kids do not operate this way in a crisis. They just don't. Ben calls the Indominus a camouflage dinosaur, but doesn't really have a way to know that. Could he really see what happened all the way on the ground? Dave and Roxy try to go see Claire, but can't get a hold of her. She's busy with Owen at this time. The group of kids come across Zack and Gray's gyrosphere, as I mentioned before, and Bumpy comes back.
Bumpy!
Yes, this Bumpy. It does not seem possible how big it's grown. Like, how long have they been camping there? Ben's gonna be real fucking sad when that volcano erupts.
We need to get on that boat!
Guys, where's Ben?
Hey! How's it hanging? Dudes.
Are you hiding Bumpy in that bush?
The jungle makes all sorts of weird noises.
More cartoonish behavior. So they find an ACU van, presumably the one from the movie, and it has a radio and tablet. There is no answer on the radio, but they only try one channel. Now that kind of oversight is believable. So they start driving, and there's a stupid fucking joke about using turn signals.
Coming! Step on that thing! Zigzag! Are you signaling?
Everyone not yell at me while I'm saving our lives!
They find an employee at Wu's lab, and he is less composed than they are, as he goes on a tangent about how Wu was exploring his own genetic interests.
Greedy, and instead of dinosaurs, he built monsters. They're all clueless about what's really going on here. And after everything I did for the other guys.
Other guys?
They don't even hide it. Darius says,
No, you have to know what to do. You're an adult.
Anyway, the worker steals the ACU van only to get sidelined by the Indominus. Once again, the actual death is hidden from view. Oh look, that's familiar. At least they inverted the frame this time. Just like with Zack and Gray, they are having fun rather than surviving. At this point, Brooklyn's phone is exposed and they crash.
I knew it!
Sammy?
We're on episode 6 now, and I'm kind of picking up the pace here. Yasmina's trust issues come back into play over the phone reveal. Sammy admits she's trying to steal data. She is supposed to deliver it to Manticore. She claims that her parents borrowed money from shady people who worked for Manta. I find this plot point to be a little odd, or ill-explained. I don't know. Needless to say, Yasmina and Sammy are no longer on good terms. Next, we get another crossover. Even a shot direct from the movie in animated form of Maserati chasing the Indominus with a helicopter. And then, as you might know, it crashes into the birdcage.
What was that?
The kids start kayaking, and the counselors take a jeep to try and find them. Suddenly, Kenji is full of wisdom and critical thinking, even though he hasn't really shown such maturity before.
We're here because of her.
Or maybe something else would have happened, and we would still be stuck here. At this point, is there anything you could say that would make Sammy feel worse than she already does?
They end up kayaking right into the Mosasaurus arena. After an over-the-top escape sequence, Yasmina loses their iPad, which is how the counselors were tracking them. She also severely injures her leg, which is obviously going to be a problem.
Kenji is right. Listen, I've done my share of selfish things.
While Brooklyn and Sammy make up, Yasmina is not so forgiving.
We may need each other to stay alive, but don't for a second think that makes us friends again.
An announcement says to report to the dock for evacuation. The time limit is 2 hours. Ben says they can't make it in time because he's memorized the evacuation plan. You know, he may be one of those worried types, but that is just far-fetched. As they're about to get on the monorail, Toro shows up again, leading to another survival situation.
I'll check here, you check the stadium.
Is it just me, or was that day to night transition really fast? Anyway, they spend most of the episode on the monorail, reviewing what they've been through.
Finally. It's cool, man. We're good. Seriously, Ben, you've had juice boxes for days. How much stuff can you fit in that thing?
Obviously, the first thing I'm gonna do when I get back is restock it.
And the point comes up that their experience doesn't necessarily make them friends. That they're all just too different.
Doesn't it usually take more than a few days to become friends with someone?
We have nothing in common.
It's not all bad. If I hadn't come, I never would have met.
Ben saves the day when they're being attacked. And then he gets attacked. At the start of the final episode, Ben falls out of the monorail after a failed attempt to save him. For a very brief moment, it threatens to have the kids acting more like they should be. But it is instantly thrown away.
The monorail is going back!
Then, they all jump out. They have a dramatic moment about how it's too late for Ben, but it's just too predictable to hold any water. Obviously, Ben is going to be fine.
Just a compy.
Seriously, Kenji? It's like a foot tall.
We need to go. In a group, compies can...
Not really the time for a lesson, dino nerd!
It's not like you've gotten us anywhere even close to the dock, Mr. VIP.
Don't you have some sort of unboxing, being a brat all the time, video to be shooting?
I don't even know what's going on anymore.
Guys! Just stop!
Wait, how did Toro get in the maintenance tunnel? The scar on its face means it's Toro, the same one as before. You know, from the monorail? They started to circle the track, yeah, but they jumped out way before they'd be back. And how did it physically get down there? Does it fit in the manhole? Did it fall? How is it not injured? Fuck this.
Darius, what do we do now?
I don't know! You never should have trusted me.
You kept us going, no matter what some of us have done.
You made us feel like we were in this together.
They have their generic all is lost moment, and then get back to trying to get out with newfound motivation. And then, they blow Toro up. Not really. Somehow it survives, admits defeat, and just says, fuck you. A side effect of the explosion gives them an exit, where they find that the ferry has already left. And that's it. The show's over. But instead of panicking, they're all chillaxing. We'll be fine, we're good at this. Also, as expected, Ben and Bumpy are still alive. So I guess they want to make more? Should they? No, it's just not worth it. This series doesn't offer much more than the Jurassic World movies do. Let's talk for a sec about that supposed interview, where Spielberg insisted the show not be for kids. I think it's fine that it's suitable for kids, it just feels like false advertising. It took me until the third episode to get used to the animation. It's just got that specific character movement that you see in a lot of Nickelodeon animated shows. I'm not entirely sure how to explain it, but maybe you know what I mean. So, is it kid-friendly? I mean, yeah, for the most part.
Oh, crud.
There's not a single swear word, no blood at all, aside from Toro's forehead, no romance, and it's just not very violent. Even by post-2010s overly sensitive, be offended by everything standards, I'm not sure there are any scenes worthy of controversy. Generally speaking, I guess I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm pretty numb to what Jurassic Park has become, and previously I had already gone into Fallen Kingdom with zero expectations. Did I like anything? It was pretty funny at times.
That's not a dream. A dream is like when you save a bunch of mermaids from a shark. Brooklyn. Like, it was dark. She was confused. She needs glasses. Vanity, am I right?
I didn't really have any issues with the animation, aside from getting used to it. You know, just because something's animated doesn't mean it has to be immature, and I guess that's what I was hoping for. I personally just wanted a little more out of the show, and I think that's okay. Unfortunately, I didn't get what I wanted, and I guess that has to be okay too. The series wasn't nearly as offensive as the movies were, and for that much, I'm grateful. That bit I mentioned about no romance though, I'm glad they stayed away from that. There was enough trendy youth cringe going on as it was. I hate to use Star Wars as an example, but people seem to be a lot warmer when it comes to The Mandalorian than they are with the Disney trilogy. Probably because it's not a fucking mess. If anything, I can admit a small part of me was hoping for a similar situation here. Maybe a series could offer some substance, I thought. Unfortunately, Camp Cretaceous is pretty stale. And even worse, it's left open for more.
Don't forget Superstar.
Who knows, man?